In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a detailed breakdown of everything that's contained within my book, Chord Charisma 2.0. I recently ran a poll on my community tab asking people why they hadn't bought the book Chord Charisma, and the vast majority of people said that they just didn't know enough about the book. First of all, let's talk about what you actually get when you buy Chord Charisma 2.0. First of all, you get the book, of course, Chord Charisma 2.0. That's the main bulk of your purchase. But then on top of that, you get the audio examples for all the chord progressions in the book. I think there's about 189 different chord progressions in the book, and you've got audios for all of them. You've got the soloing guide as well. So there's a soloing guide to help you solo over all the new different chord progression techniques that you've learned in the book. And then on top of that, you get access to the Chord Charisma Facebook community. And in the Chord Charisma Facebook community, you can post your videos, get feedback from me, ask questions, I'll reply to them. And I'm also posting videos and questions in there for you as well. So that's what you're getting when you buy the book, but I'm gonna give you a more detailed explanation of all the content within the book. Okay, so there's 31 chapters in the book, and each chapter has an explanation of the particular technique that you're learning, and then it will give you a few examples of that technique in action so you can kind of hear how it sounds. From there, I give you a chapter assignment, and at the end of each chapter, I want you to create some music using the technique or the concept that the chapter is about. It's all well and good kind of learning about these different techniques, but if you're not putting them into practice and actually making music, what's the point? The introduction of the book gives you some songwriting concepts that you can consider, different things to think about going into the rest of the book. And then chapter 1 talks about basic chord progressions. So I show you how to use the 7 chords in your key to kind of build tension, release tension, show you what order these chords are supposed to go in. So if you've got a situation where you need a bit more tension in your chord progression, you know the perfect chord to go to next. Or if you want to release some tension, you know the perfect chord to go to next, okay? I also show you a few extra different techniques you can use to create chord progressions with the 7 chords in your key too. From there, we move on to chapter 2, which is all about chord extensions, how to use these 7 chords and turn them into chords that sound a bit more sophisticated. So using things like 9ths, 11ths, 13ths. There are other different chord voicings in there as well, like 6/9 chords and other types of chords. Lots of different chord shapes in there for you to learn, and of course lots of different examples as well. Chapter 3, we talk about secondary dominants. Okay, so secondary dominants are a great way to add dominant 7th chords to add some tension to your chord progression. And these dominant 7th chords are not where you'd usually expect them on the 5 chord of your key. They're in different places, okay? If you know what secondary dominants are, you know what I mean. Then we move on to altered dominant chords for chapter 4. Altered dominant chords are like standard dominant chords, but they've got a little bit more dissonance to them. They sound a lot jazzier. If you want to add this jazzy element to your playing, of course, altered dominant chords are the way to go. From there, I talk about tritone substitutions. So that's another way of using dominant 7th chords, not on chord 5 of your key, but still having the same function as a standard dominant 7th chord, okay? Lots of examples, and then of course, an action step for you to follow using all of these different techniques. And then another way to use dominant chords would be the backdoor dominant. This backdoor dominant is a really cool way of using a dominant 7th chord, as it allows us to kind of start experimenting with playing with outside keys and maybe kind of temporarily shifting to a different key. Really, really interesting. From there, we stop looking at dominant chords and we move on to modal interchange, which is chapter number 7. Modal interchange is where we borrow chords from other keys, parallel keys specifically. So if you're playing in the key of C, you could borrow chords from C minor, C Dorian, C Phrygian, C Lydian, C whatever, okay? And I show you a chart of all the different chords that you can use, and I show you some examples of more popular examples of modal interchange. Really, really important stuff if you want to start creating those chord progressions that don't sound so conventional but still sound great. Chapter 8 is all about diminished chords. People don't use them to their full potential. They're really, really a great chord to use. You can use them as a passing chord, but you can also use them to change keys. You can do lots of different things with diminished 7th chords, and I talk about all of them in this book. Then we move on to augmented chords. Augmented chords are another chord that people just don't use enough and to their full potential. Really a lot of uses there. You can use them in a lot of different ways, and you can also use them to kind of change keys as well, which I talk about in the book as well. The next chapter is all about suspension. Suspensions add some tension to your chords and also creates a bit of movement within the chord progression because we're playing a little bit of melody within the chords themselves. So it's a really great technique to have in your arsenal. The next technique is slash chords. So if you know what slash chords are, or even if you don't know what slash chords are, I show you exactly what they are and how to use them in your chord progressions effectively. The next chapter, chapter 12, is on deceptive cadences. So deceptive cadences are basically, well, if we take a standard cadence, 5/1, for example, we're playing chord 5 and resolving on chord 1. A deceptive cadence would be where the listener expects it to go to chord 1, but it goes to any other chord that's not chord 1. And I show you some chord examples that you can use, and then I show you how to create your own deceptive cadences as well. You get some really, really spicy, interesting sounds from doing this. Chapter 13 is all about chromatic mediants. So as the name suggests, these are chromatic chords that you can use in your chord progressions to spice things up a little bit, okay? This one goes into a lot of detail, and it's best that you just get the book just to learn about it. Chapter 14 is line cliches. Line cliches, the best way I can explain it is the most popular example being Stairway to Heaven, okay? The beginning of that is a classic example of a line cliche. Really, really awesome technique, again, to have. Chapter 15 is about negative harmony. Negative harmony is often made to be this really complex and difficult thing online. Teachers online that I've seen have made it very, very hard to understand, but my book really makes it quite simple, actually, and very useful. It is a really, really cool technique to kind of switch things up a little bit. You can take boring chord progressions and turn them into really, really interesting and different sounding chord progressions if you just apply the negative harmony to them. And in fact, I've had people tell me that this is the best explanation of negative harmony they've ever seen. So from there, we move on to key changes. I show you 7 different methods of key changes, ranging from very easy to very complex. It'll get you thinking in different ways about key changes. You might have already known a couple of different ways to change key, but I'm sure you're going to learn something new here. Chapter 17 is on open strings. So I show you all the different open strings that are available in different keys, how you can use open strings within your chords to create this really cool, open, dreamy sort of sound in your playing. From there, I talk about semitones. Semitones, now, they're a very dissonant interval, but if you can use them in the right way in your chord progressions, you can create some really, really beautiful sounds. And I explain how to do that, of course, in chapter 18 of my book. Chapter 19 is all about power chords. Now, if you're a metal or a rock player, then power chords are going to be a staple in your playing. And I just show you how to create some more beefy sounding power chords, how to extend your power chords a little bit, make them sound a bit more interesting. Not the deepest chapter in the world, but it's definitely useful for those of you who want to kind of play the genres that use power chords a lot. Chapter 20, this is a big one, reharmonization. If you don't know what reharmonization is, it's where we take the chords that are being played underneath a melody and we change those chords up. So we really switch those chords around, but the chords that we switch them to still work with the melody on top. It's a really, really important subject to know about, and here you'll learn how to kind of substitute chords quite a bit. Chapter 21 is all about modal chord progressions. So I show you how to write chord progressions in all 7 modes of the major scale. So the major or Ionian mode, Dorian mode, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. And then chapter 22 and chapter 23 show you how to create chord progressions using the harmonic minor modes and also with the melodic minor modes too. Chapter 24 is all about quartal harmony. So in standard Western music, we usually use tertiary harmony, which is where we stack chords in thirds, but quartal harmony is where we stack chords in fourths, and you can create some really jazzy, interesting sounds with quartal harmony. And it's really great for playing in different modes. So it's a really important thing to know. Chapter 25 is all about voice leading. I explain what voice leading is, and then I show you the benefits and reasons why you'd want to learn voice leading. And then the next few chapters talk about different types of voicings you can use for your voice leading. So chapter 26 is all about the caged system. Chapter 27 is about closed voice triads. So I show you all the shapes all around the fretboard for major, minor, augmented, diminished, sus2 and sus4 chords. Same thing for the open voice triads chapter, which is the next chapter. Open voice triads are like closed voice triads. They're only 3-note chords, but they've got a much wider interval spread. So they sound a bit more open. They sound really, really cool. From there, I talk about drop voicings. So drop voicings are voicings you can use for 4-note chords. There's all different types of drop voicings. I go over drop 2, drop 3, drop 2 and 3, drop 2 and 4. So it gives you a really wide range of voicings you can use for major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, diminished 7th, half diminished chords. Really, really a lot of info here. Then chapter 30, I talk about my favorite chords. There are some chords that just deserve their own chapter because there's so much you can do with them. So I think there's 3 of my favorite chords I've put in this chapter that are so versatile that you can do so much with. Really, really are important chords to learn. Then the final chapter is the chapter with example chord progressions. I give you a few example chord progressions that I've written using the techniques from within the book. That's the content in the book Chord Charisma 2.0. As I said, you get the book, you get the audio examples, you get the soloing guide, so you know how to solo over all of these techniques. And you also get access to the Chord Charisma Facebook community, where you can have your questions answered, where you can have feedback on your chord progressions. I also post loads of videos in there that show you my approach to writing chord progressions too. If that sounds like your kind of thing and you want to grab a copy of Chord Charisma, head down to the link in the description and you can grab it there. And I hope this video has allowed you to have a more informed opinion on my book Chord Charisma 2 and hopefully convinced you to grab a copy of the book, because it's going to be super, super helpful for you. This is something you're going to be studying for years to come. It's really going to massively improve your playing and your chord progressions and your understanding of harmony. It's going to do wonders for you. So definitely, if you haven't done so already, grab your copy of Chord Charisma 2.0 today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.